Hi, this is Patrick Rocks, and this is my video summary of two articles that I read around the topic of musical performance anxiety, or MPA. This has become something I'm interested in learning about because of some of the experiences I've had this past year with some of my students and their anxiety levels around all school performances, and just thinking about um, what I can do and what teachers can do to help support our students in managing anxiety levels. And so, in doing some reading in the topic, I'm starting to learn more about it. And so, these articles are related to some intervention strategies that exist for MPA. So, the first article that I will be reviewing is the Seeger article. It's called Music Performance Anxiety in Instrumental Music Students, a multiple case study of teacher perspectives. So it's written by Crystal Seeger in 2017 in the Contributions to Music Education journal. The primary purposes of the study was to, one, identify kind of a list of teacher strategies for helping students manage their MPA, and then also to learn about what exists in the world of teacher development for understanding and helping students with MPA. So within the literature, Seeger points out a few things that already have been brought forward by other researchers. One is that MPA doesn't always have to be a bad thing. In fact, MPA can help performers really focus and get prepared for a performance if they can learn how to manage the negative effects. MPA can take the form of either psychological or physiological side effects, such as catastrophizing a performance in our mind, or even shaky hands or dry mouth on the physiological side of things. Research has identified some coping strategies that professionals have used, including pre-performance routines, formal cognitive training, and substance use to help manage the side effects of MPA. Research also suggests that teachers potentially can have a role in supporting students with MPA, and that's one of one of the focuses of the study. And additionally, that there could be some cost-effective ways to train teachers to help understand anxiety better, and how we can help our students. So Seeger's method was pretty straightforward. She focused her study on a city in the southwest of the United States. She reached out to districts in the area looking for middle and high school instrumental teachers to participate. Ultimately, three participants volunteered. Seeger conducted 2 interviews 6 weeks apart with each candidate. After transcribing, she coded each interview and then performed an analysis. So the 3 educators were 2 high school instrumental directors and 1 middle school. And in the study, Seeger goes into depth about what their conversation was like in coding as she coded the interviews. But generally, these are the takeaways. Both educator 1 and 2 argued that age played a role in what they were seeing in their students, that the older the student, the less MPA they were dealing with. The middle school director did note that he felt like his middle schoolers didn't necessarily have too much MPA going on. However, he acknowledged that perhaps middle school was a little bit less of a stressful environment for performances than high school. Some of the strategies that these educators used, educator 1 explicitly taught about the concept of flow state and used the idea that you can take anxiety and use it to focus your attention on technique, or on really focusing on your sheet music as a way to kind of get totally focused in on the performance and let the anxiety kind of become a secondary effect. Educator 2 talked about using humor to kind of break the ice a little bit, break the tension in the classroom when she felt like the students were a little bit anxious. This is a research-backed theory called CBT, where you replace irrational fears with positive ideas. In all 3 cases, teachers used some sort of calming activities like breathing exercises, or awareness drills to help students on a daily basis just kind of learn that coping strategy. And then educator 3 used performance simulations where he would ask the students to run in the around the school for a moment to get their heart rate up, to kind of model what it could feel like physically before a performance when the nerves are kind of taken over. All 3 educators emphasize the importance of creating safe spaces in their classrooms for students. This meant having students learn how to critique each other in positive ways, reacting positively to mistakes, and just allowing students to know that mistakes are part of the learning process. They felt that this was important. And then in all 3 cases, none of them received any formal training in how to help students manage music performance anxiety, although all 3 did express interest. So the trends, just again, kind of taking what Seeger learned from these interviews, it was confirmed from all 3 that music performance anxiety in students that these teachers taught expressed itself both physically and mentally for students. The participants all believe that teachers do have a role to play in helping students manage their anxiety. These included helping by creating positive reactions to mistakes, employing an arsenal of coping strategies that fit the needs of the students. And they all, for the most part, agreed that maturity level did play a role in how much anxiety students felt. They all 3, again, recognized the value of additional training and education in this area. Finally, Seeger believes that her study supports the research that exists on the topic, that teachers should learn more about the anxiety's effects on their students. And she also advocates for more formal training, potentially in pre-service music education programs, to learn more about MPA. Seeger identifies some areas where this study can go from here. One is to broaden the sample size. This was a admittedly very small sample size of just 3 teachers. She also was interested in learning about how music educators handle their MPA, and then also thought that it would be interesting to hear from students and have students self-report their levels of anxiety as well. So the next article that I reviewed was called Development and Evaluation of 2 Brief Group Interventions for Music Performance Anxiety in Community Musicians. This was a study conducted in 2017 by Diana T. Kenny and Naomi Halls. This was published in the Psychology of Music journal. This study had 3 primary focuses. One was to test 2 types of interventions and their effects on MPA. 2 was to recommend a modality of implementation for how to administer these interventions. And then 3 was to learn a little bit more about how MPA impacted community musicians. So Kenny identifies some key ideas from the literature. One is that MPA manifests itself in many ways, both cognitive and physiological, and that these can affect the quality of musician performances. 2, Kenny points out a psychological term called AS, or anxiety sensitivity, and this is the fear of anxiety-related bodily sensations. So this is focusing more on the physiological effects of MPA, and that will become one of the interventions that we learn about in this study. CBT is kind of the gold standard for anxiety therapy. Many research-based findings show that CBT has positive effects on anxiety, and this has also been studied with MPA. AS, however, the therapies for AS have never been studied before with MPA, and therefore a comparison between AS and CBT therapies has never been conducted either. And that's where this study takes off. That's kind of the niche for this study. So Kenny's study takes place in New South Wales in Australia, and focuses on community members who play in bands and orchestras, or potentially who are teachers as well. Ultimately, she attracted 68 community musicians to participate in a one-day workshop with a 4-week follow-up. She employed a quasi-experimental strategy for this study where participants were randomly assigned into either the CBT or AS treatment groups. And each participant was asked to prepare a 2 to 3 minute unaccompanied piece of music on their instrument or for their voice. They were going to be asked to perform that 4 times. And each time they performed, they would complete a anxiety state survey. So this is a model showing how the single day workshop worked. So everyone that was participating met in a location for a treatment workshop. Upon arriving, they were sent to go and complete their first performance and anxiety state survey. Following that first performance, everybody received the same presentation, which was referred to in the study as a placebo presentation, kind of a baseline general information about performance anxiety. Following that performance, they were sent back to perform their piece again. After the second performance, they were separated into their treatment groups, the CBT treatment group and the AS treatment group. They had 4 sessions where they learned about the therapies, did some practice with that before they did their third performance, which was the last performance of the day. For the next month, they were asked to continue practicing what they learned in their workshops before they came back for a final performance, which ended the study. Performance quality was judged by 2 judges. One judged every single performance and scored it on a scale of 0 to 6. And then judge number 2 was randomly assigned 25% of the performances to serve as a validity check for the first judge. Just briefly, it's important to mention what each of these treatments looked like. So the CBT intervention was targeting the cognitive symptoms of anxiety. The study took a well-respected and well-researched therapy called CHILLED and implemented parts of it and modified it so that it would work for a musical setting. This was taught during the workshop, and then the participants were asked to practice what they learned for the 3 weeks afterwards. The AS intervention was developed by Garden Schwartz and Krask, and again modified for MPA purposes. This intervention focused on the physiological symptoms. So the results of the study show from performance 1 to performance 4, the self-reported anxiety levels decreased in both groups, the AS group and the CBT group. Additionally, the performance quality scores, as rated by the judges, increased over the course of the 4 performances as well with both groups. So Kenny points out that both CBT and AS interventions saw positive results, both in anxiety levels and in performance quality. She argues that this was a successful model that could be replicated in the future. The single day workshop was a strong model for future use. She also was pleased that she was able to add more information about community musicians into the field. Kenny also identifies some limitations of her study, including that more research needs to be done to learn more about the AS intervention, as this was the first documented study about that intervention as it relates to music performance anxiety. There was no control group in this study. They used a placebo presentation to serve as a control, but she argues that that would be something that would be helpful to learn more about these therapies. She argues that a larger sample size or potentially a different sample would help further the results and the learning in this area. And finally, she argued that it would be interesting to study the results if they put a control on how much practice could be done in between performances. So that's kind of a look at these 2 articles about music performance anxiety. Thank you.